What's going on, beautiful people of YouTube? Let me turn on my sound card so I can hear myself properly. Today we're going to take a look at Letsynthesize. We're going to review his channel. Before we start, I want to mention that there are a buttload of videos in progress, which are mostly going to be production tutorials and how to sound like XY artist, because the whole video was a massive success in my books. So we're going to do stuff like that. To be completely fair, I purchased a course many years ago from Letsynthesize, so I know for a fact that he is a trusted source. But yeah, I just saw his recent video and he actually tagged me in the comments saying review this Nosphere, so I thought we could give it a try. He came out with this how space laces, distorts and processes sounds to always sound fat, thick but clean. Let's give it a shot.
Yo, the Larson here, welcome to the newest Synthesize Sunday episode. And because lots of you guys requested, today I want to talk about how to distort like space laces through this little thing I made.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool tutorial material, but as you guys know, I'm a kick drum fiend. I don't like the kick drum at all. I think it's too distorted.
Why do we use distortion? Simply because distortion creates harmonics that creates perceived loudness. Here is a pure sine wave.
Also, fun fact, he's also Hungarian like me, so I don't know, just a random fun fact.
As you can see, it has one harmonic. What happens if I start adding some analog clip or analog saturation to it? Beautiful higher harmonics are added to it. And with this you perceive the sound being louder. We can mimic this effect by simply trying to draw in the higher harmonics that we just saw here. Now it will be a little hard to replicate, but let's try it. So let's go with every odd. So as you can see, the added higher harmonics are a little different, but the point here is that we were able to create some extra perceived loudness by adding extra harmonics to this pure sine wave. And this is the point of distortion. Now, if you want to use distortion in a clever way, you must know and you must accept this fact that you are creating perceived loudness. And sometimes it is a lot easier to achieve this goal by using a different effect or a different process. Because let's face it, if you have a boring sound, like this. Let's apply the soft clip. It got louder, but it doesn't sound better at all. So distortion is not always the key to make your sound better.
I would still use distortion on these type of high-end sounds because those are really good layers if you want crisp, textured distortion on the high end. So I would definitely use that, just not as a main element. I would probably cut the lows and the mids off of that and just use it as a crunch layer, maybe. But yeah, he's right. Saturation usually gives you better results if you are putting it on a low and heavy sound.
Better and louder and stronger. Because I bet you want to create loud and fat, but also clean sounds, not like loud but garbage sound.
Also, slight disclaimer, this video is definitely not sponsored. It's not a collab or anything like that. We know each other, but that's all. It's an honest review, if you were wondering.
And when I analyze Space Lace's songs, I realize that the dude does not always distort that much, but he creates perceived loudness in a very clever way. So based on what I saw, I created this little clip that I already played it to you in the beginning of this video, and I exported it. My favorite way to create perceived loudness is adding some fake amplitude modulation. Let's have a look at this kick and the surrounding of it. You can see here that something weird is happening, and that is because I applied an auto pen that vibrates the sound. So basically it's just a volume slider dragging up and down, and if you set it to a quite high frequency, it can create a perceived vibration, amplitude modulation. If the low frequency of the kick amplitude modulated everything else, when you compress and process everything together, all the basses, the kick, the effects, synth, everything. So I wanted to replicate this effect. This is why I went into the bass group, and this is why the auto pen is here. All I did was just automated the amount. So here you can see this is only the bass group, and without that you can hear that the bass group sounds the same, but with the auto pen I was able to replicate this
Yeah, that's actually a pretty clever method, and I know for a fact that a lot of drum and bass producers use that to have the noise of the respace vibrate on the same key, if that makes sense. Because if the actual note that you play is super low, like below the 0 octave, like below sub octave, you can hear individual cycles because it's so slow. It vibrates so slowly. And you can use this knowledge and apply it with an auto pan or something else. I never really experimented with it that much, so I don't specifically know right now at this moment how to create a automatic pitch syncing auto pan. But you could achieve like a 99% similar sound if you route your sub bass to a ring mod plugin and let the sub bass frequency kind of modulate the amplitude of the top end on a group, for example. I'm going to show you an example in the end.
Sort of heavy compressed, heavy saturated sound on top of the kick. I think it sounds great. I also did the same on the snare too. It's not that obvious based on the VIC.
It's really nice how he time codes his videos with these green progress bars. I always wanted to do that, but I always forget when I'm in the edit mode, so I'm just a dummy.
Okay, so originally this was the sound. I added the sub, and altogether they sounded nice. But it could be louder and fatter. And this is why I applied a simple noise layer. And this is what I saw in Spaceless's song a lot of times. He was able to layer noises on anywhere to make the sound really wide and fat and loud. And this is the noise that I applied here.
Spaceless uses a lot of noise, that's true.
So with the noise, without the noise.
What I like to do personally is to add Melda wave folder to kind of distort the noise together with the sub, or like to get a, where's my phone? You know, just to get a noisy distortion on the high end.
So this is how the original sounds. In most of the cases, especially with dubstep sounds, dubstep basses, compression, especially OTT, can create a lot better result than, you know, heavily distorting your sound. Now, some sort of distortion can come handy, can add slight, really good sounding higher harmonics, but this is not always the key. But what I experienced in the years is applying clever process like OTTs and other effects can bring a lot better result than heavily distorting your sound. Some sort of slight distortion can be cool, that can create nice higher harmonics, but be careful with that. But instead, you know, just play with filters, compressors, and other effects like flangers, reverb filters, and whatever you want basically. So this is the key here without the OTT. It's not bad, but with an OTT, some slight saturation, 5 dB.
Yes, I guess this is also a creative choice. If you want loud reverb, you can put the reverb before a compressor, but for that you really have to be on an intermediate level, in my opinion, because you can get lost pretty fast if you don't treat that effect properly.
And especially with the reverb, it can create a really huge sound. The preset itself is super simple. It's just this weird wavetable FMing sine wave with the sub oscillator. And the scene mode is activated here. And in the FX, I only have a flanger, and that is what I meant. If I deactivate the flanger that creates higher harmonics again, it's really nice metallic higher overtones, the sound changes completely. Especially if I deactivate the hyper too. So as you can see, it's really stupid. And this is what I meant, that when we want to create fat sounds.
Nowadays, I like to do that, the hyper part with a chorus. I don't know why. You can make fat sounds with adding unison, distortion. There's definitely a big difference between peak loudness and perceived loudness. Perceived loudness is something that you can achieve with distortion. It's pretty simple.
And you mustn't always think about distortion. You want to think about how can I add extra higher overtones, extra voices, for example, you know, mid-range heavy sound that cuts through the mix, especially in this musical surrounding. Because without the saturator,
I think that kick is definitely too high in pitch, or I don't know, it just sounds like a fat distorted sub note.
You can hear the mid-range. Let me try to boost it for you a little. Instrument like a pure sine wave or this snare body, it can create really nice mid-range too. Now keep in mind that if your sound,
or maybe the kick was just too long, that can also be the case.
So this is why fat tracks can be really helpful for you. Now when you build up a fat track, what you want to do is apply several different types of distortion that creates really tiny higher harmonics or different series of higher harmonics that can add together and create a little fatter sound. Especially when you compress it and add other effects, it can create a really cool sound, but this is not a rule, so you cannot put it on everything and expect that all the...
Yeah, basically, Letsynthesize, Dan Larson is a pretty knowledgeable dude. If you're tight on money, I suggest just to watch his YouTube videos. It's really informative. You really have to know a couple of the basic definitions of music production to understand everything he's talking about. But yeah, check out his courses, I guess. He is definitely real, knowledgeable, normal guy. Not a scam. Yeah, can't say really anything about it. But on that note, let's check out that thing I mentioned earlier. If we switch to Ableton real quick, I can show you a cool method which you can use to kind of use that fake amplitude modulation thing. I'm gonna just use a simple, let's just make a screech real quick. Now, if you want to make this a little more loud, just slap on that trusty old Nosphere. Let's just EQ it a little bit because it's a little too harsh. Okay, so now on the group, you can just do kilohertz ring mod and then group it and then just use a linear EQ, or if you're lazy, just use EQ3. That's the fastest. Duplicate the channel. All you need is one EQ3 there and then EQ3 with the ring mod. This is going to be called a lot of A's, so we can see it later when we select it. Let's just select the high end for that part and the low end for this part. I usually like it separated at around 150, so let's set both to 150. Our low end, this bad boy, is gonna modulate the high end. So when you selected the drop group, because this is on the drop group, you can select the actual channel in here. So just click on post effects. And now if you go to the ring mod and set it to input 3, 4, that's the sidechain. It will basically vibrate the whole thing based on the frequency. So if I play a really low frequency or a high frequency, that's a good thing to experiment with. You can just separate the top end and maybe just use it slightly, or maybe use it with an LFO shaper or auto pan just so it triggers every quarter note maybe. But yeah, experiment with it. If you want this little thing, I'm gonna link this rack down below for free in the YouTube description, so look out for that. And stay tuned for the next video because that's gonna be a scata edit breakdown. You're gonna be able to download the whole project file with all the presets and racks, so stay tuned for that, boys. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to check out my website for a lot of high quality Serum and Vital presets and drum samples. You can also support me on Patreon, where I upload bass music specific tutorial content every single month. Peace.